Well, let's soar right into the news. Father Luke gets things started with a new flight of faith.
This week, he talks of Good Friday and the greatest mystery that lies ahead.
Welcome back to the Flight of Faith here on Good Friday. As we enter into the mystery of the death of the Son of God, many will be moved to tears as they experience the Lord embracing them in their own suffering. Tears come easily to some in these moments. Pope Francis has often spoken of tears as a gift, not something we often think of in that way. Let us listen to the words of the Holy Father to understand how our sorrow can be transformed into joy. That is, how tears can be a gift. On the 12th of February this year, Pope Francis said, "I've often spoken about the gift of tears, and of how precious this is. Can one love in a cold way? Can one love as a function and out of duty? Certainly not. There are some afflicted people who need comforting, but sometimes there are also some comforted ones who need to be afflicted, reawakened, who have a heart of stone and have forgotten how to cry. There's also the need to reawaken those who do not know how to be moved by the sufferings of others. Grief, for example, is a bitter path, but it can serve to open our eyes to life and the sacred and irreplaceable value of each person. And at that moment, one realizes how short time is." The Pope is teaching us that tears and grief can open our hearts and remind us of what really matters. He has said that sometimes tears are the only true response to the question of why innocents suffer. In January 2015, the Pope listened to a 14-year-old boy in Manila, Philippines describe life on the streets as a struggle to find food, to fight the temptations of sniffing glue, and to avoid adults looking for the young to exploit and abuse. The Pope also heard from a 12-year-old girl rescued from the same streets. She covered her face with her hands as she wept in front of the Pope, but she managed to ask him, "Why did God let this happen to us?" Pope Francis said, "A real answer was impossible, but the question itself was important, and the tears that accompanied the question were even more eloquent than the words." Certain realities of life, he said, are seen only with eyes that are cleansed by tears. For people who are safe, comfortable, and loved, he said, learning how to weep for others is part of following Jesus, who wept at the death of Lazarus and was moved with compassion at the suffering of countless others. If you do not know how to weep, you're not a good Christian. So says the Pope. In his apostolic exhortation to young people, Christus Vivit, or Christ Lives in English, the Pope again spoke of the importance of tears. As a church, may we never fail to weep before those tragedies of our young people. May we never become inured to them. For anyone incapable of tears cannot be a mother. We want to weep so that society itself can be more of a mother, so that in place of killing, it can learn to give birth, to become a promise of life. We weep when we think of all those young people who have already lost their lives due to poverty and violence. And we ask society to learn to be a caring mother. None of this pain goes away, it stays with us, because the harsh realities can no longer be concealed. The worst thing we can do is adopt that worldly spirit whose solution is simply to anesthetize our young people with other messages, with other distractions, with trivial pursuits. Perhaps those of us who have a reasonably comfortable life don't know how to weep. Some realities in life are only seen with eyes cleansed by tears. I'd like each of you to ask yourself this question: can I weep? Can I weep when I see a child who is starving, on drugs, or on the street, homeless, abandoned, mistreated, or exploited as a slave by society? Or is my weeping only the self-centered whining of those who cry because they want something else? Try to learn to weep for all those young people less fortunate than yourselves. Weeping is also an expression of mercy and compassion. If tears do not come, ask the Lord to give you the grace to weep for the sufferings of others. Once you can weep, then you will be able to help others from the heart. At times, the hurt felt by some young people is heartrending, a pain too deep for words. They can only tell God how much they are suffering, and how hard it is for them to keep going, since they no longer believe in anyone. Yet in that sorrowful plea, the words of Jesus make themselves heard. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Some young men and women were able to move forward because they heard that divine promise. May all young people who are suffering feel the closeness of Christ and the Christian community that can reflect these words by its actions, its embrace, and its concrete help. This Good Friday, may you know in the depths of your heart that God hears your tears, and in fact, He cries as well. All He does is to love you and to serve you. May you experience this love, His love, this day, and may you embrace the love He has for you.
So